You are criticizing me tacitly for using the word "thump the Bible," which was an accurate description of what people. I'm not in business to help. I'm in business to get things done. If you want to win the debate,
do you think it was helpful to say that?
According to Bill O'Reilly, we Christians who stand for traditional marriage are just Bible thumpers, meaning we lack the sophistication to be able to defend our position. We're just this archaic bunch of people who wave the Bible around saying, God don't like gay, so I don't like it either. Now, this isn't just about marriage. Bill O'Reilly has a real snooty attitude towards the Bible as it is. He's releasing a book called Killing Jesus, and I'm wondering, how are we supposed to take a book he wrote about Jesus seriously when Bill doesn't even take what Jesus said seriously?
I think what's happening. Propaganda.
Okay, I'm not gonna say much about so-called same-sex marriage, largely because YouTube could suspend our account. I've done a video before defending traditional marriage, and YouTube banned it. So I can say from experience that these so-called tolerant liberals are not very tolerant of different views. So if you want to hear my more in-depth perspective on marriage, please grab a copy of my audiobook, Weapon of Mass Destruction. That goes for you too, Mr. O'Reilly. Oh, and speaking of the title of my book and same-sex marriage, my book has nothing to do with gay porn. The word "as" in the title stands for American Socialist States. The word "as" also refers to the Democrat Party symbol. See, there's actually nothing dirty about the title of my book. I also called it that because I wanted liberals to maybe act on a little curiosity and check it out given its supposedly pornographic title. Anyway, of course, from a liberal's point of view, they're being intolerant of what they view as intolerance. Well, I'd buy that if they weren't so passive when it comes to the most intolerant ideologies. Socialism and atheism didn't prove to be very tolerant of Jews. Hitler may have grown up Catholic, but he didn't stick with it. And liberals embrace socialism and atheism. You libs do know that Nazis were socialists, right? Libs embrace Marxism, communism, and secularism, systems that come with genocide. They don't express their disdain for Islam, but we Christians are the crown of intolerance. When it's because of Christians, they live in a country where they're free to not be one if they don't wanna. But what about the KKK? Aren't they a Christian group? Yep, they did consider themselves Christian. And I'll remind y'all that they broke the commandment of taking the Lord's name in vain by using him to promote hate as well as murder. And I'll also remind y'all that it was other Christians who stopped them. Oh, and they were mostly Republicans. And I know there's a few of you so-called Republicans who are now saying, Zo, leave God out of this. Look, if you don't believe in God or his involvement, that's your problem. Don't try to make it mine. Now, I agree with O'Reilly to a degree. If Christians are going to defend marriage, they have to be armed with something more than thumping the Bible, as O'Reilly would put it. But unlike O'Reilly, we're humble enough to know that we can't make a point better than what God has already made. And unlike you, we're not selective about what God says. You're the guy who can't tell the difference between Jesus recounting actual events or when he's being allegorical. I'll try to make it very simple for you. When Jesus refers to Noah, he's referring to a historical figure, not an allegory. If Jesus mentions the figure's name and you can turn back to the Old Testament and find that person's name, then that was a real person, including Jonah. If Jesus tells a story such as the prodigal son and you flip back to the Old Testament and you don't see that story in the Old Testament, then it's safe to say that story was allegorical. It ain't that hard. Bill O'Reilly looks down his nose at people who believe the Jonah and the whale story. I reckon Bill O'Reilly believes the virgin birth story though, but can't believe that a man survived 3 days in the belly of a whale. I have a nephew, and this isn't allegory. I have a nephew appropriately named Butch, because he was a pretty tough kid. A little more than 20 years ago, when he was about 8, he and his friend were playing around a pool unsupervised. Butch fell in. Butch couldn't swim. Neither could his friend. Butch's friend, scared and confused, tried to find help. By the time he did, and by the time the paramedics got there and pulled him from the bottom of the pool, my nephew had been underwater for up to 25 minutes. He was taken to Loma Linda, where he was put on life support. After showing no response, a week later, the decision came for him to have to breathe on his own. And he did. And to this day, as far as I can tell, he's still fully functional. No sign of brain damage. 25 minutes underwater is a long time, Bill. The doctors did what they could do, and the Lord did the rest. So, sorry, considering what happened with my nephew, the Jonah story ain't far-fetched. You either believe Jesus or you don't. And I know I've got those who reject God who are listening saying, I don't believe that nonsense either. Yeah, but I'm talking about people like Bill who claim to believe, yet are selective about what they believe about the Bible. You either believe it or you don't. And just because your Harvard-educated mind can't grasp what happened doesn't mean it didn't happen. We don't know how the Kardashians are wealthy celebrities, but it happened. But Bill, who among us can write the book on morality? None of us. No one person can do it. Even the Bible wasn't written by one person to convey morality to us. God made his account through several people. I don't make this morality stuff up as I go. I'm not that full of myself. I wouldn't want to be some guy who just decides on gay marriage because I personally just think it's right or wrong. That would be a decision based on my own self-righteousness. And I trust God more than I trust anybody else, including myself. And when God lays out what the definition of marriage is, that's what I trust. But like I said, I understand where Bill is coming from to a degree. You can't just say God said so, because people have the choice to reject God and what he says. God gives us the free will to do that. But where I disagree with Bill is that he seems to be saying that you should not include the Bible in the defense of marriage. The Bible is the very foundation the defense should be built on. However, I will say to those who want to defend traditional marriage, you do actually have to build a defense. You really can't just say because God said so, because people do reject God. You really have to build a defense. The key is to not build the defense on your righteousness, but God's. God blesses us with intellect, creativity, ingenuity, and other fortifications to deliver his message. Use those things and his word to shape your defense. I'm Alfonso Rachel for ZoNation, where if you want a great example of what I'm talking about with defending marriage while making a liberal contort and stretch to say it's based on hate, visit my website, alfonsorachel.com, and grab a copy of my audiobook, Weapon of Vast Destruction. There's links to places to download it from, like Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. Bill O'Reilly would hate this book because he'd have to admit that some knucklehead like me actually made a book that demonstrates intellection when citing scripture without the pomposity of a Harvard man. My book has nothing to do with gay porn.